All right, so it's officially February. XFL 2020 is right around the corner. Teams are starting to prep for their Week 1 matchups, and we're here at XFL Chalk Talk to break down players that you should be aware of heading into the season. We've swapped out Pastel for Kenny, in case you didn't notice. Kenny's crew was getting worried about you. People were asking where you were. There were even conspiracy theories that were starting to take shape. Daisy O'Donnell on YouTube had a conspiracy theory. They said Kenny has been killed by Cardell Jones, and his Discord account is being run by Pastel, who doesn't want Cardell to be arrested.
That's a good
Kenny,
one.
Kenny,
that one.
what do you have to say about that conspiracy theory? Can you put that one to rest?
I don't know if I can actually, because your first two suspects, if I ever go missing, should be Pastel number 1, and number 2 should be Cardell Jones. So
that's Cardell effing Jones to you, sir.
So, but I'm here, guys. I apologize. I had class on a day we recorded last week, and I couldn't get out of those plans. So I do apologize for missing the show. Thanks.
You don't
for
need
your
to
concern.
apologize. We have lives to live, Kenny. It's okay. We're not all going to be here every time.
Try to better yourself, bro. It's all good.
We actually are going to be without Pastel for a few weeks because he's off now at Army training out in California. So not sure how much of a loss that'll be, but
Well, hey, did you? I went ahead and watched the DraftKings segment, and he goes, "I'm gonna take everybody's money," and I'm like, "Dude, you're gonna miss like the first 3 or 4 weeks of DraftKings."
yeah, that's true. And what's crazy about that, before we get started, not to drag on too much, but what's crazy about that is he's going to be gone for 3 weeks, and he won't have. At least he told me he won't have any access to like the internet, his phone. So he's literally going to miss 3 whole weeks of football and then come back and have to catch up. So you won't see Pastel for a while, but at least Kenny is back. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and go division. We're going to start with the East, go to the West. Let's start with the DC Defenders. Glessner, who are some players that people should be aware of, on the lookout for when it comes to DC?
Yeah, the big one that jumps out in my mind is definitely Jalen Roll, 6'4" receiver that they recently acquired from the Seattle Dragons. The DC Defenders kind of have a smaller receiving corps, so they bring in a big physical receiver who in college played at Air Force, a triple option offense, so really didn't get to showcase his skills. But Riley, you and I actually met him at the DC Defenders open house.
He's a big dude.
He's a big guy. Runs well, great hands, and an explosive player. So I think he's going to turn a lot of heads in DC.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, they up until recently they had a lot of smaller, quicker, faster guys. Then they bring in Jalen Roll, which nobody expected, and then in Simi Cobbs, who is also a larger receiver who was recently waived by Dallas. So obviously they're bringing in, trying to balance out that room, maybe find some more red zone options, to throw the ball up to when they get close to the goal line. But that's a good one. It'll be interesting to see, Gless, how quickly he can get on the field, though, because it's a crowded wide receiver room, first of all.
It is.
And he came in literally like a few days ago. Like when we were at the DC Defenders event, Pep Hamilton literally said he met Jalen Roll that day.
Wow.
So he hasn't had much time to really catch up. So it may be a while before we see Jalen Roll, but he's the all-time leading receiver at Air Force. He's a physical freak, as we mentioned, but he had to serve his duty. I think he was gone for 2 years, and now he's back. So he's definitely a very intriguing name to keep an eye on. But that wide receiver room is crowded. They traded for Rashad Ross about a month ago. They brought in Eli Rogers through the supplemental draft. So that's going to be probably your 1-2. Then DeAndre Tompkins is another guy that I'm excited to see, especially in the return game, now that the XFL is bringing back the kicking game, the special teams and kickoffs and punt returns. He was a prolific kick and punt returner at Penn State, and when I watched him at minicamp, he was flying. That dude runs like a 4.39. So the Defenders have a lot of speed, and now they have a lot of size. So I think that wide receiving core is definitely something to watch out for.
Yeah, and Riley, think about this too. What we kind of envision a Pep Hamilton offense to look like: multiple tight ends, multiple backs. I mean, you may see a lot more spread sets than we're accustomed to seeing from Pep, and really what he wants to do, just because of the sheer talent that he has on the roster.
Yeah, we didn't even mention the running backs, which probably is the most talented group on the whole team. When you have Jarrell Presley, Donnell Pumphrey, Jarrell Presley, leading rusher in the Alliance last year. And then you have Donnell Pumphrey, who's the all-time leading rusher in NCAA history. So they have and Khalib Abdullah was looking good in camp as well. So they kept 4 running backs. So that just tells you about the talent that they have at that position. So the defenders' offense is going to be scary. If that offensive line can keep it together, and the few times I saw them, it was mini camp, so you can't really get a good good indication of how the offensive line is going to be because it's not full contact. But if they can keep it together, those skill positions for the defenders, they may have the best in the league. But let's look at the defense before we move on. Kenny, I know that you're in love with the defenders' safeties.
Yeah, I love both their safeties, Schmarko Thomas and Matt Elam. I mean, I don't think there's a better duo in the XFL. You've got one guy who's a former first-round pick who's kind of had some legal troubles, and Matt Elam, and is looking to kind of resurrect his career. But by all intents and purposes, still has that elite level talent. And then Schmarko Thomas was a fourth round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers and played pretty decent. A little undersized. He's 5'9", 217, so he's not necessarily your prototypical size for a safety, but highly productive out of Syracuse when he was in college. And then you pair that up with guys like Scooby Wright and Sam Montgomery at linebacker and the D line. The defenders have the potential to have one of the best defenses in the league for sure.
Yeah. Personnel-wise, absolutely. I do think it's worth mentioning. I know this is a player segment, but Jeff Fitzgerald, the defensive coordinator, is no longer with the team. This just happened like a few days ago. That is not good to lose your defensive coordinator 2 weeks before the start of the season. That's a huge blow, no matter how good your personnel is. So it'll be interesting. And then they lost Jalen Myrick, one of their probably starting cornerbacks, to the IR. So we don't know if he's on short-term IR or if he's out for the season. We don't really know the extent of the injury, but we do know that he's out for a while. So that's another huge blow for the defenders. They have guys, as you just mentioned, Kenny, but losing your defensive coordinator, not a great situation. Let's go ahead, Kenny. Kenny, let's go ahead and move to New York with the Guardians. I know that you were very high on this team. Let's go ahead and start on the offense. Who are some guys on the offense that you are really excited to see for the New York Guardians?
One of the guys I really like his name's Austin Duke. He played football at the University of Charlotte and led the team in receiving all 4 years he was there. And this is 2 years in the FCS and then 2 years in the FBS. And his production never really trailed off. The guy is an absolute dynamite player in space. You give him the ball in space, he's a threat to take it to the house every time. I mean, you watch some of his highlights, a lot of what he scores off of are little quick screen plays where he makes the first 2 or 3 guys miss, and then he's absolutely gone. He's 5'9", 170, so he's a little on the smaller side, but the guy's agility and speed and just off the charts, and I think he's really going to help open up that offense.
I'm so shocked, Kenny, that you didn't start with Matt Colburn. Just so shocked.
That's right.
Well, I didn't want to be too predictable. I've started out a lot of segments with weight guys, and I love Matt Colburn. I think he's going to do a really good job in New York. I think he's kind of a diverse back that Kevin Gilbride looks for in his offense, kind of like Ahmad Bradshaw was back in the day.
Yeah.
He's going to be a stud. They have a lot of good running backs. Darius Victor is going to be great.
Tim Cook's going to be their workhorse.
Yes. He's a stud. And then you got guys like Mikhail McKay at wide receiver. D'Angelo Yancey, hopefully he's not on the IR that long. The New York Guardians offense, in my opinion, is the most slept on offense in the entire XFL.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to fight you on that. You mentioned that Yancey and then Gentry they're both on the IR. 2 of their starting receivers, 2 of the top 3 receivers. We're not sure how long they're going to be out for, so I'm interested to see what receivers step up while those guys are out with injury. And I think one of the guys you need to look for is Teo Redding. I am super high on this guy. He joined the team during minicamp. He's a smaller, faster guy, but he has ups. If you go on the New York Guardian social media accounts, he's making one-handed catches, circus types of catches. It seems like every day. I know the team has been he had a great training camp. I think Mike Mitchell. We talked about Teo Redding with him. He's very high on him as well. Mike covers the New York Guardians for XFL Board. So that's a guy I think you should be looking out for, especially while Yancey and Gentry are nursing their injuries. And even when they get back, I mean, if Redding can make a name for himself in these first couple weeks, it may be hard to take him out of the lineup.
Yeah, the receivers definitely have a big opportunity to step up with Gentry and Yancey out. So this is a good opportunity for guys who might not have another shot to make a name for themselves and really put themselves on the map. It's going to be really fun to see.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of balls go to Mikhail McKay. I mean, let's not beat around the bush there. I mean, with your number 2, number 3 receivers out, I think you're going to see an increased focus on getting him the ball in the passing game.
You're also going to see, though, Gless, an increased focus defensively on him as well. It may be tougher to get him the ball. They're going to really have to be committed to the run game and have success there with Yancey out, because Mikhail McKay is going to have a lot of pressure on him, to get open for McGloin. So we'll see how that works out. Kenny, typical Kenny fashion, going off the beaten path. We'll talk about defense in a minute, but there's another guy that you are extremely excited to see take the field, and he's not an offensive player, and he's not a defensive player.
Special teams, baby, it's back in fashion. And I picked
three phases, man. Three phases of the game.
Justin Vogel. I'm really excited to see Justin Vogel punt for the New York Guardians. He was a Pro Bowl alternate his rookie year in Green Bay. Then he kind of bounced around the NFL, and now he's with, obviously, the Guardians. But I think people are overlooking the punters because of the new rules. It really punishes you from a field position perspective. If your punter is kicking the ball out of bounds, if he's kicking it into the end zone, you've really got to master that coffin corner without it going out of bounds. Without going out of bounds. So if you have a guy who's a Pro Bowl alternate who can pin guys, inside the 20, that's going to be massive, considering most teams are probably going to be starting on the 35 or the 45, depending on what happens during the punt. I think it's a huge move for the Guardians. It's very underrated, and I think this guy's going to really affect the game from a field position.
It's all about hang time too. You've seen that, Kenny, in special teams during minicamp and training camp. Punters and kickers have been really focusing on hang time more than distance, because with the new rules and how they're trying to bring the excitement back into the special teams. The special teams, in terms of the punters and kickers, are trying to find ways to kind of, make it so it's not, out of control with these returns, because there's a lot of fast guys in this league. There's a lot of good returners.
A lot of great returners.
We mentioned Tompkins in DC, Pearsonell up in St. Louis. So there's a lot of fast guys out there. But let's go real quick. I think before we move on, we should mention what I think is the strength of the Guardians, and it may be the best overall defensive position group in the league, and that is the Guardians secondary, which is led by cornerback Jamar Summers, who I'm a huge fan of. I watched him a ton at UConn and then at the AAF. He was the best cornerback in the AAF. It was either him or Keith Reeser, who's now in the NFL, who I think is actually in the Super Bowl. I think he's with the Chiefs. I don't know if he's playing or not, but he definitely was with the Chiefs. But anyways, Jamar Summers is a guy that is going to anchor that defense. We saw in one of the scrimmages he had a pick six, but he's not the only guy. I mean, Demetrius Cox at safety, Terrence Alexander. I mean, they have some guys in this secondary that are really going to make it difficult for teams to move the ball down the field. And when you look at their Week 1 matchup, that is the big key to me, because the Tampa Bay Vipers, they lose Antonio Callaway. My thoughts on Aaron Murray. I don't think he's by any means a bad quarterback, but I don't think he's one of the better ones in the league. So it'll be interesting to see how the Vipers offense can move the ball against that secondary, because they're stacked.
Yeah, and not only are they stacked with players, but their defensive back coach is Chris Dishman, two-time All-Pro, multi-Pro Bowl player in the NFL. Like that secondary is going to be top-notch, not only from players but from a coaching perspective too. But I do agree with you, Riley. I like Jamar Summers a lot. I love that whole unit itself. It's going to be a no-fly zone in New York. And when the weather gets bad, too, up there, if they're playing in windy, hazardous, cold, frigid conditions, it's going to be even more of an impact, because those guys are just going to be roaming the secondary, just picking off balls left and right.
Yeah, I just think in the Eastern Division, it makes them, if not the favorite, one of the favorites to come out of there.
Wow.
Just because, well, I mean, think about it, right? If you go down in DC, okay, their strength, at least from a talent perspective, is going to be at the wide receiver position, and that's strength on strength right there. And then if you look at Tampa, if you look at St. Louis, if you're able to make those teams one-dimensional, you're going to be able to crowd the box and really kind of control the game from a defensive perspective. So if you're good in the secondary, that gives you a lot of options and a lot of flexibility on defense. So, I'm with you guys. I love the unit. I think it's the strength of their team. And if they can shut down pretty much, I think they can shut down everybody in the East as far as from a passing game perspective. So I'm with you guys. I love this unit.
All right, so let's move on to the St. Louis BattleHawks. Glessner, I mentioned DeMornay Pearsonell. I know that you love DeMornay Pearsonell. Who are some guys from an offensive perspective that you are looking forward to seeing from the BattleHawks?
Yeah, so I'll mention a couple before I kind of hone in on the guy I want to focus on. Obviously, Jordan Teamu being named the starter is huge. Dual threat, can use him in the run game, can use him in the pass game. Christine Michael and Matt Jones, I think, are going to be a really great 1-2 punch. Matt Jones, former starter in the NFL. Christine Michael also had a couple years with the Seattle Seahawks. So those guys are kind of seasoned veterans and know how to run the ball at a high level. So I think that's something to keep note of. But the guy I really want to focus on is a tight end named Cole Hunt. Played at TCU and also played for the Commanders in the AAF. He's a big-bodied guy. He's about 6'6", but extremely balanced. A great blocker, as well as can really run the seams well with nice hands. So with the offense kind of in transition down there with Chuck Long taking over for Doug Meacham. From what we've heard, he wants to run out multiple tight ends opposed to what Meacham wanted to do, which is run 4-5 wide. I think you could see him make a lot of plays down the middle of the field and really be a good safety valve for Jordan Teamu. So I like Cole Hunt. I think he's a guy that could shock some people with just kind of how useful he'll be in the pass game as well as in the run game.
That's a good pick, man. And you know the one guy I was kind of excited about is, and it was funny, I wasn't a huge fan of his in college, but with the way the rules set up in the XFL, I think he's someone they could really use kind of as a Swiss Army knife is Nick Fitzgerald. With the double pass rule, getting him out in space. Because the guy, essentially he was a very good dual threat quarterback in college. Passing was never going to be his strength at the next level, but the guy's an incredible athlete. So I'm excited to see how they utilize him.
Well, that's definitely the reason he made the team, right? Yeah. Just because you can use him in that. And you're seeing that all over the place with Quentin Flowers in Tampa, Eric Dungy in Dallas, and Fitzgerald in St. Louis, bringing in guys that, from a quarterback perspective, they may not be the best in terms of throwing the football, but they bring so many other elements to the game that you can utilize them to take advantage of these new XFL rules.
Yes.
All right, so let's go ahead and move to the defense. Kenny mentioned earlier that the defenders may have the best safety group in the league. And I'm not going to necessarily disagree with that, but I think St. Louis might have something to say about that, right, Gless?
Yeah, for sure. The guy that really stands out to me here is Will Hill, 6'1", 205, former star at the University of Florida. Really known for his big, for being a big hitter and really establishing that middle of the field and making his presence known. I think one of the most underrated things about Will Hill, guys, is he actually played in 50 games in the NFL. So from an experience standpoint and just a knowledge standpoint, understanding route concepts, he played at the highest level for 50 games, which I haven't looked at the different numbers on everybody in the XFL, but he is not the most experienced guy. He's definitely in the top 5. So I think that's going to be a massive advantage for the BattleHawks, having a guy back there that just frankly knows how to play like a pro. And not only that,
so much fun to watch, Glass.
All he does is lay the wood. Which
I was just going to say, he's out there just looking to truck stick people, and I love it. He can get caught out of coverage sometimes, out of position, but he's looking for the big hit, and he causes a lot of turnovers. He's one of those ball hawk type of safeties. And it's interesting that you mentioned Will Hill being so seasoned, because on the other side you have Kenny Robinson, who is anything but seasoned, coming out of college. Right. He was invited to the NFL draft, so he has a bright future, but being able to learn from a Will Hill at the safety position is definitely going to help him in terms of his progression in his career.
Yeah, and if you remember, Gless, you talked about the experience. Will Hill's the guy who, against Cleveland a couple years ago, when the Browns went to go kick a game-winning field goal, as time expired, the ball was blocked. Will Hill's the guy who returned it all the way for the touchdown. That was such a crazy play. And you nailed it, Riley. Kenny Robinson's going to be super exciting, and he's going to be a litmus test onto if the XFL is kind of a springboard to the NFL. So he's a very important player to watch, because if he has a lot of success and then he ends up getting drafted or picked up or whatever, just extremely, it becomes an extremely valuable asset for an NFL team, that could open the floodgates for some other things for future college. A guy is kind of sticking with the defensive back. A guy I'm really excited about is Joe Powell, Virginia native, actually. And if you read where he started his career, he started with the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks in the Professional Indoor Football League. It wasn't even the AFL. This guy's come from nowhere to play professional football. He worked his way up through all the indoor football leagues. He eventually made an NFL roster. He was on the AAF. He was on some AAF teams, and most recently he was on the Baltimore Brigade of the AFL. So I like and he went to Globe Tech University. Like, this guy he's a scrapper, man. He's a guy who has probably been counted out a bunch, and I like those blue collar guys. I want to see what he can do in the XFL and see if he can become a hard nosed player.
Great name, Kenny.
Look, by the way, I don't want to rag against Globe Institute of Technology, but I don't know what that is.
I've never heard of it in my life.
I'm looking at it now. It looks like it's in Manhattan, New York. So it's in New York State.
Is it an actual like school you attend like in person, or is it one of those online? Did he play there or he just went there?
No, he played there. Total 53
yeah.
tackles with half a sack and 1 pick in 2013.
I was convinced when you said that was like a Trump University type of situation.
No, they actually had a team.
His resume is just crazy. Like, if you look at his resume, it's like, how did he get here and how did he play professional football with this resume? But he's got to have something physically that makes teams take chances on him.
That's what the XFL is all about. You know,
Yes.
there's the guys that, we've seen in the NFL, and they obviously need those guys. But guys like that have that kind of story, that's what makes the XFL so special. And why I'm so glad that the XFL is here to give these guys an opportunity to continue to showcase their talents on a higher level and a higher stage. So good pull there, Kenny. Nice work. Let's move to the Vipers. Guys, this team fascinates me. I'm jumping on the bandwagon, man. The more and more that I look into this team, and it's not because the odds in Vegas came out and they're the favorites. That's not why. I've been starting to build momentum with this team. The more and more I look into them, and I know losing Antonio Callaway was a huge blow. And we've talked about that in our last segment that we recorded, so I won't get into it too much. But they just have so many diverse skill sets, specifically in the offense, that I'm so excited to see how Trestman puts it together. You guys know my love. For Quentin Flowers, and it's been well documented on this show. I have no idea how they're going to use him because, one video I'm seeing him taking snaps at quarterback, one I'm seeing him with the ball in his hands running it. So I'm not really sure how they're going to utilize him, but all I know is they need to find ways to get him the ball. And I hope that they make an effort to do that because he's probably one of the best pure football players in this league. We know the success that he had at South Florida. I mean, he holds every freaking record at the school. So him, and then you look at Nick Truesdale, who's just a matchup nightmare. Kenny, I know you're high on Truesdale, and I think people, when they drafted him first overall, and I'll admit I was one of these people were scratching their head, really? In the XFL, with these rules, you're going to draft a tight end? But if you look at the AAF, he was clearly the best tight end in the AAF. And with Mark Trestman and Aaron Murray, I think this is the perfect type of player that would fit well and complement with Aaron Murray, a guy that's not really going to push the ball down the field, but they're going to take advantage of those seams with Truesdale and those matchups against linebackers. And in the XFL, probably going to get linebackers that aren't as quick as what you're used to seeing in the NFL. And Truesdale's going to freaking tear them apart. So those two guys right there are going to be spectacular and fascinating to watch. And I just wish Antonio Callaway was there so they could burn down the sidelines. It would be just a ultimate combination. But they have other guys too. I'm really high on Reese Horn from the AAF. He was one of the few good players on the Memphis Express. The guy just continually made plays. So they have playmakers at receiver, but losing Antonio Callaway sucks. But those are some guys that I'm excited to see on offense.
And what's going to be fun about this team is they have a lot of size. Like, if you look at Tanner McAvoy at wide receiver for them, he's 6'6", 230. And then you look at Jalen Tolliver. Jalen Tolliver is 6'3", 213. So they have a ton of size, which is how big of a factor is that going to play when they're doing a point after touchdown attempt for 1, 2, or 3 points? If they think they have a height advantage and a size advantage down there in the red zone, and they can just chuck the ball up to Truesdale, McElvoy, Tolliver, all those guys,
Yeah, they traded for Stacey Coley, who's not a bigger receiver, but he was second team All ACC for Miami. So they've got talent in the wide receiver core. They may not be names that you necessarily know, but they've got talent there.
Hey, guys, and speaking of talent, one of the other things when I look at their roster that I think is going to be really diverse is on the goal line. And let me give you a name, Jaquez Patrick. He's about 6'3", 235 out of Florida State. just a freaking bowling ball, right? So you're going to get all these guys. You're going to get the scat stuff. You're going to get Nick Truesdale. I think you're going to see this guy within 5 yards just completely take over, almost like Brandon Jacobs, complete physical freak.
I'll be interested to see who gets the ball there because they have Davion Smith as well, who was kind of that goal line back for the Orlando Apollos. He played at Michigan, was very successful there. So they have big backs to complement, Quentin Flowers out of the backfield. The team just fascinates me. I'm so interested to see how they use their personnel. But guys, it's not even just their offense. I know we're going to talk offense because of Trestman and his offensive mind, but this team's stacked on defense too, dude. Their defensive line is sick. And that's right now their biggest name defensive lineman, Obum Gwancham, he's not even playing. He's on the IR. But you look at guys like Ricky Walker, who was, big-time player at Virginia Tech, and then Josh Banks and Nikita Whitlock. I mean, they have some guys maybe a little bit undersized, but I think in the XFL, you don't necessarily – size isn't as big of a factor as speed. And these guys are like guys with high motors that can get after it, especially Nikita Whitlock, right, Kenny?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's super athletic. He's like you said, he's a little undersized, but the guy played fullback in the NFL. He played obviously nose tackle at Wake Forest, and now he's back to playing defensive tackle here in the XFL. But the guy's got incredible athleticism. He's probably one of the strongest guys in the league. I mean, if you go look at his pro day, I think he did something like 40 reps at 225 or something like that. Like, it was insane. 43 reps at 225 is what I'm seeing. And so for him, he's going to be a major disruptor. I don't know if there's anybody in the league who could block him one-on-one. If there is, it's very few.
Yeah, the defensive line is stacked. Emmanuel Beal at linebacker. I was shocked that they let go of Reggie Northrup, who was the anchor of the Apollos defense. He was third in tackles in the entire AAF, and the Vipers let him go. I was shocked by that. But I think that had a lot to do with what Emmanuel Beal showed. He's a quicker linebacker. He's a little undersized. He played at Oklahoma, but he can get sideline to sideline. He's kind of a workhorse type of back. Like he's a guy that's just going to be around the ball at all times. He had 176 total tackles in 2 years at Oklahoma. So he's another one of those guys on Tampa Bay, maybe a little undersized, but he has a high motor and he gets to the ball quick. And then you have guys like Jalen Collins at cornerback. He was a second-round pick out of LSU. They traded for him from the Wildcats. So, Tampa Bay, I think, might be the favorites to me coming out of the East. The more and more I look at their roster and how complete it is, I'm really excited. In case you can't tell, I'm really excited about the Tampa Bay Vipers.
Riley's all in on Tampa.
I'm starting to, man, and people give Tampa crap. That's why I'm like, when you start bringing down the roster, I'm so excited. I hope they start curb stomping some teams because all of the crap that their fans get for rooting for Tampa, and people make fun of their uniforms and things like that. But I think this team, when you hit the field, they're going to be dangerous. I think if Aaron Murray can play at a high level, they're going to be a dangerous team.
Yeah, like with all contrarians, they're either going to be really good or it's not going to work out very well for them. I don't think you're going to see
in a couple weeks. I may look silly. They may be the last place team.
Right. It's going to be one or the other. It's going to be black and white. I don't think you're going to see a lot of in between for this team. So, but I'm excited. I think Trestman, he's a contrarian type of coach. So, and I think the roster reflects that.
Yeah, fascinating is the word I use.
Yeah, what I like on defense is that they have, to your guys' point, a lot of guys that may be a tad bit undersized, but they're productive players, right? They were extremely productive players in college. And to me, that always wins out over size, especially in a league like the XFL. It's like one thing if it's the NFL and you have time to develop guys. Hey, guys, we got 10 games, and we had a 2-week training camp and a week-long mini camp, so we need the best guys we can on the field. They don't have time to develop talent. Right, I need talented guys now, and these guys are talented. They just may be a tad bit undersized. That's all.
All right, so that wraps up the Eastern Division, guys. We've gone for almost 30 minutes, so I think we're gonna wrap up here, and we're gonna split this video up East and West. So we'll wrap up the East, and then we'll start with the West. So look out for that video as well. We'll put it in the card at the end of this video. So look out for the Western breakdown, which we're gonna start in a minute. What's up, football fans? This is Riley from XFL Chalk Talk. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all things XFL and interact with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at XFL Chalk Talk.